So for those of us who are fortunate enough to either receive an annual bonus or any additional little bit of cash, our first instinct is, of course, usually to spoil ourselves, especially with things that perhaps we couldn't afford throughout the year or that we couldn't get on Black Friday. However, there's also this little nagging thought that most of us usually have that is a warning not to unleash our inner Skhotane, so to say, and to try not to flash the cash. Now, in addition to that, we all know that January is usually the longest month, or at least it feels that way, and we all complain that it's quite hectic during that time. So what's the best financial approach to take? John Manyike, who is head of financial education at Old Mutual, joins us now to assist with a little bit of advice. Thanks so much for coming through, John.
Thank you, Sakina.
So, of course, you know, people might say, you know, I've worked really, really hard throughout the year. We're all feeling a bit tired, a bit down. So we all want to spend in order to pep ourselves up. But what would you say is the best approach to thinking about what to do with some extra cash that may come your way?
Look, firstly, Sakina, there's absolutely nothing wrong with spoiling yourself a little bit with your bonus money or whatever form of cash injection you may get just before the festive season. It's your hard-earned money. But I think what is key here is to actually do it in moderation. I think we need to be very realistic that, you know, many of us still have too much debt, and, you know, and you'll be suffering from an ostrich syndrome if you forget that you still have too much debt and you go on a spending spree, spoiling yourself, because that voucher is not going to help you in January. Your ATM, if the balance is 0000, that voucher is not going to impress the ATM. And we know a lot of people who borrow money in the first week of January because they've squandered their money. So you have to do it in moderation.
You know, we laugh about it, about the voucher. Yes. But December, you know, people are already sending out the messages, December, boss. Yes. So it's a lifestyle in South Africa. And it's difficult, especially when others are flashing and others are getting down and the vouchers are happening all over the show. How do you insulate yourself against that?
So the first thing to do is don't go into the festive season without a budget. And in fact, you need to prioritize your most essential items. You know, so start paying off your debt. In fact, if you're getting a bonus, the first thing you need to be looking at is which debt can I kill? You know, kill some of your debts. If you have arrears, catch up on some of those arrears, because arrears do reflect on your credit report. Again, we need to demystify the myth that credit is a bad thing. You know, so when we talk about, you know, improving your credit score, using your bonus to clear off some of your debt, because you could actually use credit to actually create wealth. But use that bonus very wisely, prioritize those things. And then again, for many parents who have children, there's school fees, there's stationery, there's uniform. And sometimes we don't get to prioritize this thing. What's the point of filling up the table during the festive season, you singing Monati Mpulaye, and then come December or first week, rather the 1st of January is a problem? Because, you know, for some reason, the ATM has a tendency of asking people, you know, when they have a 6 rand balance, do you wish to proceed? Proceed where? How do you proceed? Because the ATM cannot issue out coins.
You know, John, you're killing me. This is such a serious issue. But, you know, you're touching on such very valid points here, because this is exactly what people do over this festive period. That's why they call it the silly season, because people do silly things. But, you know, there are people who may be listening who acknowledge the truth in what you are saying, but they also worried that, you know, with the best of intention, they may not be able to withstand all the temptation. They may not be able to control themselves and how they actually go about their spending this festive season. What can they do?
Yeah, so when you have paid off your most essential items, you've paid your debts, you've paid your rent or your bond, you know, all those important things. And then you know you cannot spend what you don't have. You know, because the temptation comes when the money is lying somewhere there, you don't have a plan, and you go into the festive season. But again, you know, a lot of people live far from where they grew up. We live in the cities, and then we're going home. There's an expectation from family members that, oh, he's come back home, he's successful, and then they expect you to provide the financial support during the festive season, not even just support, entertainment. But again, this is where temptations come. Sometimes we need to take our families into confidence. You cannot give what you don't have. So you need to balance your family's expectations with what you can really afford.
And this, of course, is very difficult because, I mean, what do you do? As you say, there is that expectation that is placed upon you. And when you have to go and fill up the table and do all the things that are expected of you during the festive season, is there a different way in which you can perhaps prepare to mitigate come that time, given that you know the expectation will be there in December?
Yeah, so one, I think for those who are going home, at least when you go home, make sure that you've paid your debts, so that you don't have a situation where you end up spending that money which was meant for rent and other important things, because you might come back and then you've got new problems that you never had. The other thing is, you know, you do sometimes have family members who want to pop in. And you don't know how long they're going to be visiting during the festive season. And they stay there and you finish your groceries and now you're actually dipping into your January groceries and so on. So again, what's wrong with saying if your family members are coming to visit, there's nothing wrong with asking how long are you going to be here?
You? Who are you going to ask that to?
How long are you going to be here?
But they're going to be
Bring
offended
something.
if you ask them.
Say again?
They might be offended. And this is the uncomfortability of the situation that we deal with. Because, you know, we are socialized in a particular way. Culturally, you are told it's unacceptable for you to ask people how long they're going to stay for, let alone ask them to contribute towards, you know, whatever groceries you're going to need.
No, of course, I mean, depending on the type of relationship we have with the family members. I mean, of course, there are dysfunctional families. I mean, there are certain things which are quite sensitive. So you need to find a smart way of actually dealing with that. Of course, there's no one size fits all for different families in how to handle that. But unfortunately, for many people, that becomes a bit of a challenge. I think those who happen to live in estates where you need a pin are probably safer, because you can't have anybody rocking up without an appointment.
You know, John, just a final one.
Sorry, I didn't mean to paralyze you.
Just a final question on this. You know, you say that we should actually be looking at making this bonus work for us a lot smarter going forward. So do you have some advice, like the sort of things that people could perhaps invest in, where you maybe don't have a lot of money, maybe a 5,000, 10,000 that you have as disposable income? What would you suggest people do? So
one, speak to your financial advisor and look at how do you start an emergency fund, for example? You know, what kind of financial savings instruments that may be available? It may be a unit trust-based fund. You know, those are the different options that you may need to be looking at with your financial advisor. The reality is, for many people who don't have an emergency fund, they are facing some risks, because a lot of people are living from hand to mouth. For example, if your salary wasn't paid for a good reason, you know, you didn't get paid for 1 month, imagine how long it will take many South Africans to recover. Or maybe their salary is delayed for 3 days. I promise you, even the most quiet person in the office will be speaking in tongues, because people just cannot survive with a delay of the salary for 3 days. So an emergency fund would actually also be a useful thing to look at. John, thank you so much for coming through. And yeah, we laugh about it, but you know, these are very serious issues. And please try not to let your bonus turn you into a Skhotane this festive season. And thanks to John Manyike, who's Head of Financial Education at Old Mutual. And we have all of this information. Try to send it, put it out on our social media platforms to help you to make those important decisions on how to spend your year-end bonus wisely. Let's take a break.